Ezra's where he needs to be. And so are we.
Hey, welcome back, ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Erie, and this is all of the Easter eggs, references, and little things you might have missed in the Season 1 finale of Ahsoka. That's not the finale that I thought we were going to get. It definitely seemed to set up a second season, or at least set up the Dave Filoni culmination movie. And as always, guys, I want to know what you thought of the episode down in the comments below. I'm sure it's going to be lit. And once again, I got to thank all of you for watching us all season long and for helping us break down this series. We still have lots of Ahsoka-related merch that we designed ourselves on our merch store at ScreenCrushMerch.com, including the Apprentice Family Tree, the Say No to Death Sticks, the Apprentice Lives, and many, many more. Shopping our merch store is the best way for you to support what we do here. Deeply appreciate you. Many thanks. Let's break this baby down. The title of the episode is The Jedi, the Witch, and the Warlord, which seems like a play on The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. If you haven't read that or seen the movies, it's about 4 children who enter a magical land where they defeat a witch with the help of a magic lion, who is also a metaphor for Jesus. And it's pretty easy to find parallels in this episode. We have 4 heroes who travel to a faraway land to get help from space Jesus, Anakin Skywalker, and they defeat the Night Sister Witch, Morgan Elsbeth. In fact, the titular wardrobe is how the kids arrive in their magical world, and in this show, the Warlord, Thrawn, is the key to arriving home. I should also note that the kids do spend years in the magical land, but eventually do return home to England. So this bodes well for the 3 heroes that are trapped at the end of this episode. So this episode debuted on October 3rd, which was also the premiere date for Star Wars Rebels. Appropriate since this is essentially resolving the events of that show. And this was also the premiere date for the Clone Wars animated series, which this show also continues many stories of, including the Night Sisters. And real quick, I just want to address a couple Easter eggs that I missed over the season. Last episode, I asked if anybody recognized this symbol in the Senate meeting building, and boy was I embarrassed when Burke Hayes pointed out that this is the symbol of the Galactic Senate, and that the Chancellor Valorum Episode 1 action figure actually came with a staff bearing this symbol. I should have remembered that. StarWars.com also put out a video that pointed out Ezra's scout helmet in Sabine's apartment, and also we can see the hairpin of her mother, Ursa Wren. Now that we know what actually happened to her mother, this is a pretty sad little memento.
Oh, and speaking of Sabine's apartment, I got a really important question I need to have answered right now, person, so
I don't know why you're bothering talking about all this. We're all gonna die anyways.
Gee, buddy, what's going on?
Dude, take it easy.
God,
take it down
far.
a notch. Somebody's not buying green bananas. Like, what's got you so depressed?
Life is pointless because you see I'm losing my hair.
Dude, seriously, calm down. That is totally treatable. I mean, if you're losing your hair, then you should start using Keeps. They're the sponsor of this video. You will not believe how many guys start losing their hair, but they put off doing something about it. Keeps is clinically proven to work. With Keeps, I get a personalized plan from a licensed medical provider without even having to leave my home. I can even message the medical provider anytime via their secure messaging portal.
Wow, you really use Keeps?
I sure do. You see, guys, there's a history of hair loss in my family. So when my hair started to thin, I didn't waste any time. According to clinical studies, treatments offered by Keeps are 90% effective at treating hair loss and can increase hair growth by up to 35%. In fact, most Keeps customers see results within 6 months of starting treatment. So it is important to act fast, and you have to start early and stick with it. The sooner you start using Keeps, the more hair you'll save. Keeps stopped my hair loss right in its tracks, and they have helped nearly 1 million men like us keep their hair. That's why Keeps has more than 4,500 5-star reviews. So guys, if you're noticing that you're losing your hair, don't ignore it or hope the problem goes away. Do something about it right now, because hair loss stops with Keeps. To get a special offer, go to keeps.com/ScreenCrush or click the link in the description. That's keeps.com/ScreenCrush. Okay, so back to Ahsoka, and Doug, we'll get to your question later on, okay?
Okay.
The episode opens with military drumming. Appropriate since we are slowly marching toward a new war between the Republic and the Imperial Remnant. Thrawn continues to be amazing and perfect as he orders them to begin interlocking procedure. Later in the episode, we see his Star Destroyer, the Chimera, locked into the hyperspace ring, just like the Jedi starfighters that we saw during the Clone Wars. Now, last episode, Thrawn was totally content to let the Jedi live.
It matters not whether Ren and Bridge are killed or stranded here.
Yeah, so why did he change his mind?
Well, when you read the Thrawn novels and you watch him in the show Rebels, you see that Thrawn has never really lost a straight-up military battle. In fact, he outsmarts opponents by using their own cultures against them. But the Force has always been his blind spot.
I must admit, the mysteries of the Force are an enigma to me.
The only time we ever saw Thrawn get angry in Star Wars Rebels is when Bendu reads his fortune.
I see your defeat like many arms surrounding you in a cold embrace.
and Ezra defeated him with the Force, using nature against him. So I think Thrawn is actually scared of the Jedi because he is scared of the unknown, and he allied himself with the Night Sisters to have his own Force users on his side. But now, the Jedi approach, and he's actually starting to get nervous. The Night Mothers reward Morgan, saying,
"She who heard our dreams across the stars."
So actually, when Morgan was saying,
Thrawn calls to me.
this is how he talked to her, by asking the Night Mothers to place a long-distance call for him. When Thrawn spoke of a bargain he made with the Night Sisters, this is probably what he exchanged. They contact Morgan for him, and in return, he brings the Night Sisters' bodies to Dathomir, but more on that later. Then they perform a ceremony for her called the Gift of Shadows, which is very similar to when the Night Sisters imbued young Asajj Ventress, Savage Opress, and Darth Maul with Darth magic during the Clone Wars. This process made them physically stronger, but also purged their minds and gave them clarity. They burn her face with the fires of Force magic, and for a moment her eyes glow like Sabine's did when she was possessed with the spirit of the Night Sisters on Dathomir. And then they gift her with
The blade of Talzin.
So we've actually seen this blade before, used by Mother Talzin in the Clone Wars when she fought Mace Windu. Talzin is, of course, the name of the Night Sister leader during the Clone Wars, but I want to point out the historic symbolism of flaming swords. The use of fiery swords has always been a sign of the divine in the Bible. God placed a flaming sword at the entrance to the Garden of Eden to prevent Adam and Eve from ever returning. So the sword, in a way, is there to protect innocence from the unrighteous. So in Star Wars, Jedi are essentially religious warriors who use flaming swords, a shorthand for saying their power comes from God to protect the innocent. But that sword is also seen as an image of punishment of God's wrath. So we also see flaming swords used by the Sith and now by the Night Sisters. And then we go to the T6 shuttle flying above the naughty nomads.
Wait, where are they bad nomads?
No, they're called the you know what, it doesn't matter. Where Ezra is constructing a new lightsaber. And guys, look, I'll be honest, it never even occurred to me that this T6 shuttle was the same T6 shuttle from the Clone Wars. So we first saw this ship appear in Clone Wars Season 5 when Huyang helped Padawans build their first sabers.
The lightsaber is a Jedi's only true ally.
Now, I just assumed that Huyang's original shuttle was destroyed by the Empire and Ahsoka recovered a different one. But it turns out that Huyang has actually spent decades in this thing, hiding out from Vader and the Sith Inquisitors. Very cool, and my bad for not pointing that out before. I loved Huyang's bickering with Ezra here.
Stop that! Everything in here is organized.
Yeah, disorganized.
I have a system.
Now, Ezra has his own way of doing things because remember, he has built two lightsabers at this point, the one Sabine currently has and also the one that doubled as a blaster. Now, Ezra did not respect Huyang at all until he name-dropped his master.
Clever boy Caleb was, very curious. A little shy, perhaps.
And we actually saw young Padawan Caleb Dune a few times before, in this Tales of the Jedi cameo in Clone Wars Season 7 and when his master was killed in the Bad Batch. Now it turns out though that Ezra is just trying to build a saber that is like his master's, and Huyang tells him about this part.
I had two of those. Kanan took the one, the other I held onto in case he ever needed it.
Which means that Ezra's new saber will always be kind of linked to Kanan's, a lot like how Harry and Voldemort's wands both contain feathers from the same phoenix.
It is curious that you should be destined for this wand when its brother gave you that scar.
So then Huyang spills the beans on what went down between Ahsoka and Sabine.
Ahsoka became afraid that Sabine was training as a Jedi for the wrong reasons after what happened on Mandalore.
Yeah, it would have been nice to have known all that in episode 1 so we could better appreciate their character arc throughout the season.
Yeah, it would have. So the Empire decimated Mandalore in a tragedy called the Night of a Thousand Tears, and Mandalore Season 3 was all about them reclaiming that planet after that event. So the last time we saw Sabine's family, they had sworn to fight against the Empire, and their deaths would have filled Sabine with the desire to get revenge. Now, Ahsoka has been haunted by the fall of Anakin Skywalker for years. She blamed herself for driving him away from the Order.
Anakin never got to finish my training. Before the end of the Clone Wars, I walked away from him.
And now we know that she was terrified of causing Sabine to fall to the dark side as well. Hell, Luke felt the same way about young Ben Solo. He sensed the encroaching darkness inside of him, and he was scared.
Leia blamed Snoke, but it was me.
But after Ahsoka met her master spirit, she has finally forgiven herself for what happened during the Clone Wars. This is reflected in her conversation with Sabine.
He always stood by me.
When she finally remembers the good that Anakin did for her. Now, Ahsoka is likely thinking about when she was framed for the bombing of the Jedi Temple, and then Anakin brought the real killer to justice. It broke his heart when she left the Order. It made him distrust the Jedi Council and Revenge of the Sith, but he still stood by her decision.
I understand
wanting to walk away from the Order.
Later, he even gifts her with her new lightsabers. All of this makes Ahsoka want to be more like her master and stand by Sabine. And in return, Sabine later decides not to be like Ahsoka, and she actually stands by her master later in the episode. Also, Ahsoka begins the talk by saying,
Sorry. No.
A pretty clear reference to this.
Somehow Palpatine returned.
Sorry, I meant this.
I love you.
I know.
And when they discuss training, Sabine says,
I try. I do.
like, notice how she auto-corrects herself, like she knows what Ahsoka's about to say. So I think this is kind of a response to Yoda's famous quote.
Do or do not. There is no try.
Because Yoda would have drilled this into younglings at the Jedi Temple. Ahsoka would have heard this from him, and she would have passed this lesson on to Sabine. In fact, Kanan even references how this line confused him in Rebels.
How can I do something if I don't try to do it?
Actually, that one always confused me too, but Master Yoda sure used to say it a lot.
And also this line,
Being a Jedi isn't about wielding a lightsaber.
is a repeat of one of Kanan's first lessons to Ezra.
Having a laser sword doesn't make you a Jedi.
And then the TIE fighters attack with the same targeting sound effects that we heard in the original trilogy. And, okay, so The Kelvington on Twitter pointed out that Sabine bumps into Hu Yang as she's getting ready to run from the TIE fighters. He says, I'm sure it's supposed to be because a bolt hit the ship, but that is not how it's edited. Look at this again, look at it in slow motion. She just kind of brushes into him without the ship tilting. I can't unsee that now. Ezra and Ahsoka do their best impression of Yoda to hold the ship aloft as Sabine wrecks the damn thing. And as it falls, it makes the same failing engine biplane sound that the Millennium Falcon did in Empire. And I loved how afterwards Hu Yang is just standing outside the ship, despondent, like he's thinking, but all of my stuff is in there, you wrecked my ship. Thrawn is now trying to leave, and he says,
There'll be no negotiating with the apprentice of Anakin Skywalker.
Now, as we've pointed out before on this show, Thrawn actually met both Anakin and Vader, and he worked alongside both of them. He even figured out that Vader was Anakin Skywalker and sort of taunted him with that knowledge. Just as later, he taunts Ahsoka. After saying she's similar to Anakin, he says,
One wonders just how similar you might become.
And then he follows that with,
Perhaps this is where a Ronin such as you belongs.
And this is kind of brutal.
Oh, that was way harsh, Ty.
A Ronin is a samurai without a master, without a purpose, as Ahsoka walked away from the Order and now serves no master. But Thrawn is also suggesting that Ahsoka's worst fears might come true, that she could give in to the same weakness as her master and fall to the dark side. So then we get one of the fights we've been waiting for, 3 Jedi versus the Night Troopers. Notice how in this fight we can slowly see Sabine gaining confidence in the Force. She's using the lightsaber to deflect blaster bolts, but she's also using the Beskar of her Mandalorian armor. It's a very cool way to combine these two heritages of hers. And Ahsoka loves the stage picture.
It's a fighting pose. You're a total poser.
Not a poser.
After Ezra pulls 2 guards through her lightsaber, she strikes a pose, very similar to the one she made after jumping onto Mandalore in the final arc of the Clone Wars. And then, don't you love it when your theories kind of pan out?
I prophesy! I have sight! I see!
Morgan reanimates the Night Troopers. Now, we have seen the Night Sisters do this many times before. I already mentioned how they possess Sabine's body in Rebels, but in the game Fallen Order, you have to fight against reanimated corpses on Dathomir. Now, I'm pretty sure that's what's being set up by the ending, but I'm going to get to that in just a bit. Pete on Twitter also pointed out that this chant also sounded like the chant of resurrection from the Clone Wars episode Massacre. I have to shout out how brilliant Kevin Kinder's score has been across this entire series. When Morgan reanimates the troopers, listen to this violin. I recognize that note from the story of Faust in the movie Tombstone. But Twitter user NPC24601 just got that very good, pointed out that the name of this piece is Danse Macabre by Camille Saint-Saëns.
Can I ask my question yet?
Not now, Doug. We're talking about composers of the Romantic era.
From now on, we are enemies, you and I.
So it was very cool to see zombie clone troopers. For a moment their eyes glow like Sabine's did when she was possessed. And also, we have seen zombie clones before in the Clone Wars, but they were infected by parasites. It was also totally badass that these troopers just volunteer to give their lives for Thrawn because they see him as a kind of god. ScreenCrush contributor and regular Dodd Sites pointed out that the blue skin of Thrawn reminds us of Hindu gods, where blue is used to distinguish divinity. So zombie troopers are really cool, but I just gotta say,
hey, how come they didn't just cut off their limbs?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, they run away from them, but they could have just cut their legs off since they move so slow anyways, and then they could have just cut off their hands so they couldn't shoot them.
Doug, zombie troopers.
Yeah, you're right, never mind.
After Thrawn leaves Morgan behind, he says,
For the Empire.
And she replies, Dathomir. So Dathomir is the homeworld of the Night Sisters in the main Star Wars galaxy. It is a world that is very powerful with the dark side of the Force. Now during the Clone Wars, the Night Sisters had a kind of truce with Darth Sidious, promising not to interfere with his plans during the Clone Wars and vice versa. But toward the end of the war, Palpatine decided that he did not want any rivals, so he ordered Dooku to kill all the Night Sisters.
Well wait, so then why did Morgan work for the Empire? Aren't they all ruled by Palpatine?
Yes, but not everybody knows that Palpatine was Darth Sidious and was actually behind the Separatists. Like in Fallen Order, there's a Night Sister named Merrin who joins the fight against the Empire when she finds out that the Emperor ordered a hit on her people. But actually, I don't even think that would matter to Morgan. The reason she replies, Dathomir, is because Thrawn is basically going to resurrect her people.
Oh, how's he going to do that?
Well, we did see him loading up thousands of coffins from the crypts of the palace. So these probably contain dead Night Sister warriors. And Dathomir is a planet that is very strong with dark side magic. Magic with a J and a K. Like I said, in the game, it was filled with reanimated corpses. So I think that Thrawn's bargain to the Night Mothers was, contact Morgan, tell her where I'm at, and then I will give your dead bodies a ride to Dathomir. And maybe these guys will continue working together for the Dave Filoni sequel movie. So we could see like Luke Skywalker and Ezra together fighting an army of dark side witches from another galaxy.
Yeah, that sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, I thought we might actually get it in this show, but I guess not. Also notice that when they kill these troopers, we don't see green mist escaping from them like we did when Merrick was killed. Now, Merrick was a reanimated Sith Inquisitor, which means that he had dark side magic in him that actually let him control the Force, and we had seen that before. Savage Opress, Darth Maul's brother, was given power by the Night Sisters in the Clone Wars animated series, and he was a Force user, and when he died, green mist escaped his body just like Merrick. So I'm betting that when the Night Sisters reanimate a Force user, there's like a lot more dark side energy inside of them, which is why you can see it escape whenever they're killed.
You know, if you stab a man in the dead of winter, steam will rise up from the wounds. Oh yeah.
Then the heroes split up as Ezra and Sabine fight off really awesome looking zombie Purge Troopers.
Oh, what's a Purge Trooper?
Well, you fight them in the Fallen Order games. They are stormtroopers with like Beskar type armor that serve alongside the Sith Inquisitors. They were specially trained to fight against Jedi Knights to help purge them from the galaxy.
A Jedi. This is what I'm trained for.
Meanwhile, Ahsoka and Morgan have a rematch of their Mandalorian Season 2 fight. But now, Morgan has the Night Sister magic upgrade. And I loved how the Night Troopers here just stand in attention watching the fight. That's somehow even scarier than if they were actually fighting. Ahsoka won her duel against Morgan in The Mandalorian by disarming her, using brute force. But now, her experiences have changed her. She defeated Anakin simply by disarming him. So now, she is Ahsoka the White. So instead of beating Morgan into submission, she redirects Morgan's energy and uses her own weapon against her. And I've got to say that I really feel for Morgan here. She is not like super evil. She is the victim of a genocide, and she simply wanted to resurrect her people and their customs. The mothers on Thrawn's ship feel the death of Morgan, kind of similar to when Obi-Wan felt the destruction of Alderaan.
I felt a great disturbance in the Force, as if millions of voices suddenly cried out in terror and were suddenly silenced.
Ezra and Sabine take down the zombies that just barely missed Thrawn's ship, kind of like a reversal of Vader watching the Tantive 4 leave at the end of Rogue One. But over the years, Sabine has seen Kanan and Ezra use the Force to throw each other many times, so she tells him that she can do it, as pointed out by PT White on Twitter. And also, when they do the jump, we hear the Force theme play. And this is also paying off Ahsoka's lesson from earlier.
Train your body. Trust in the Force.
But Sabine stays with her master, calling back to what Hu Yang said several episodes ago.
Stay together. You always did better that way.
And I loved how this episode brought a lot of moments in the show full circle, like how Ahsoka started off the season blaming Sabine for losing the map, and then she felt betrayed that Sabine gave up the map. But now Ahsoka's become very chill about the whole thing, and she's learned to trust in the Force, to trust in Sabine instead of trying to control her. Ezra stows away on board the ship by dressing up as a night trooper, and of course in Star Wars Rebels he dressed up in stormtrooper armor all the time. Thrawn opens fire on the fortress as Ahsoka and Sabine escape by pulling a Marty McFly on the T6.
Nice shot, Doc!
And the theme here is a lot like this theme in Return of the Jedi. Now, one thing I just love about Thrawn is how much of a gentleman he is.
Open a channel, please.
Total perfection. Really psyched to see him be the villain in a movie.
Long live the Empire.
So Thrawn gets away and Ahsoka loses, but she finds balance in this. Ezra gets away and they stay.
Ezra's where he needs to be. And so are we.
While Ezra and Thrawn also leave together, mirroring the end of Star Wars Rebels.
Again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
And then Ahsoka sees her convor owl, Mori.
Oh, she has an owl? Does she like bring her messages and stuff?
Kind of. Let me explain this whole thing here because I actually think this is going to tie in with whatever happens next. There was an arc in the Clone Wars where Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Ahsoka went to a Force world called Mortis and encountered 3 gods that represented the dark side, the light side, and the balance of the two. In Rebels, we get to see a mural of these gods, and Sabine actually says,
They're archetypes.
Very long story short, the daughter, who represents the good side of the Force, is killed, and Anakin puts her life force into Ahsoka to save her life. Afterwards, the daughter's owl, Mori, follows Ahsoka around. And in Rebels, when Ezra enters the world between worlds, that's the gateway between all of time and space, Mori actually leads him to a portal so he can save Ahsoka's life. So Mori is kind of like the spirit of the daughter guiding Ahsoka on her path. I bring all of this up because the big unresolved story of this show is Baylon, Shin, and the world between worlds. In fact, I am so bummed that Ray Stevenson passed away before finishing this character's story. So Baylon says that he is seeking
power, such as you've never dreamed.
And we also hear him talking about seeking the beginning, which of course led us to speculate that he was searching for the world between worlds. And he also ends this episode perched on a statue of, guess who that is? That is a statue of the Father and the Son, the Mortis gods I mentioned earlier. But notice that the statue of the daughter has been destroyed, just as she was killed on Mortis. So this shows us that these religions and depictions of these Force gods have been around for many tens and tens of thousands of years. It's even possible that the Force gods originated in this galaxy, or that they even originally came from Peridea itself. And notice that the Father is pointing toward a mountain in the distance with a glowing peak. Mountain peaks are also a traditional symbol of divinity, like gods who lived on Mount Olympus. Now, in Rebels, Ezra accessed the world between worlds by using the Force to alter a mural of these same Mortis gods, and he did this by moving their hands. So it's fitting that the hand of a Mortis god is pointing toward this probably holy place, a place that I think has a gateway to the world between worlds. So our theory all season long has been that Ahsoka and Baylon would each reach the world between worlds and that Ahsoka would use it to return home. Now I guess that's going to happen in the Dave Filoni movie or whatever the hell comes after this. It also seems like another Lord of the Rings homage, with Baylon standing on the shoulders of the kings of old and looking toward Mount Doom. Meanwhile, Shin returns to the bandit camp and strikes a pose that's straight out of Wes Anderson's Fantastic Mr. Fox film. I bet Dave Filoni loves that clip. Next, we see an Imperial Lambda-class shuttle flanked by 2 A-wings that fly toward Home 1, Admiral Akbar's ship from Return of the Jedi. Hera enters the hangar with a Mon Cala and an assortment of the various costumes we've seen on the Republic ship this season, and notice how Chopper is the first one to know that this is Ezra.
Because of the Force?
No, because he could probably read their life signs. Ahsoka senses this right away, that Ezra is safe, similar to how Leia knew that Luke was safe from the destruction of the second Death Star.
I'm sure Luke wasn't on that thing when it blew.
He wasn't.
Now, I'm not sure what to make of these lights coming from the sky. This could be a leftover trail from Thrawn's hyperspace jump, or it could be some remnant of the gleaming on the mountain that Baylon just saw. It all leads to this moment.
Just shadows in the starlight.
And Star Wars Rebels Dad on Twitter points out that Shadows in the Starlight is a High Republic novel that actually releases today. And then we see that the stars in the starlight are actually the Force ghost of Anakin Skywalker. Now, it was really nice seeing Anakin and Ahsoka kind of reconcile in the spirit world, and I think that that brings the story of Ahsoka full circle. I was bummed that we didn't get to see more of a resolution of these storylines in this episode, but there is still a lot of Star Wars cameos to come, so guys, let me know—
Listen!
What?
I didn't get to ask my question.
Sorry, what's your question?
Well, if Sabine is trapped in another galaxy, then who is feeding her cat?
The Force?
Hey there, I just want to say thanks for the keeps. Now I get to keep my hair.
Glad to hear it. And just a reminder to stop your hair loss today, click our link in the description for a special offer from Keeps. But I want to know what you thought of this episode. Tell us in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.